This is Kyle. This is that guy again. Well, I'm going to show you guys how to do some welding. Not metal welding, but plastic welding. A different type. A lot of plastics out there. Regular glue like this just won't hold. There's other plastics such as PVC piping, like I got here, that a lot of plumbers use. What they do first is they prime it, then they paint, and then they glue it on each side. Hold it together for about 20 seconds until it dries on its own. And that holds for a good long time, but there's different types of plastic, and this type of plastic on this washing machine, which was damaged recently, is a little different, and it won't hold with regular glue. And you can see some work I've done here. It might look like a stick of gum I used, but it's actually a different type of plastic that I've melted on with a soldering iron, and I've done it on this location and on this location. And you can see there's still a few other parts we got to do. There's this part that broke recently, that's broken. Also this part, a couple others, but we're going to reinforce it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one part at a time. I'm going to use some regular super glue, model airplane glue, whichever you want to call it. And I'm going to hold it, I'm going to glue it, and then I'm going to hold it down and let it sit for a little bit, but just enough to hold it in place so I can work on it and weld that plastic together. So I'm going to show you guys how that's done. Okay, so what we got here is the welding rods that are actually plastic. And you may notice there's different colors in there. We just so happen to be using green today because green is the plastic that we experimented with and that we got best contact with. So these are different types of plastics, and if you're not sure which plastic you got, just experiment with the material you got so you can get it correct. And in this case, with this particular washing machine, it's going to be green that we're using. You can pick these up at Harbor Freight, or you can order them online. It's good to have a pack, and of course, soldering iron. This is just a regular soldering iron, in this case from Radio Shack. So what we got over here is that plastic that we were talking. This plastic has just been welded together with, been put together with model airplane glue, just to hold it together so I can work on it. It wouldn't last that long if we were going to leave it like this. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to melt a little ridge between the two connections. Doesn't have to be too perfect, just strong. And then we take our plastic and we get to, it's almost like soldering, really. What we're trying to do is we're trying to melt that plastic into that ridge. You just want to take your time with this. There's no rush. Just try not to melt the actual plastic piece that you're welding together too much. You don't want to deform it. There's nothing wrong with putting another layer on it if you want. It depends on how much you want to reinforce it. And this is your first time doing it. What I'd recommend is just taking some scrap plastic and practicing with it to get good at it before you try repairing the item you want to repair. We're going to make another ridge. Not too big one, just a little one right there. I forgot to mention. Okay, So what I've done is I've melted the wet rod all the way around the bottom piece, because this piece broke into two pieces, this part and this part. So the bottom piece has now been welded in pretty tight. Number one goal, remember, was just to push that plastic in as far as you can to make sure it melts in there so it creates a good bond. So now we're going to focus on the upper piece, and you can kind of see the little crack that's developed. It's kind of a crooked crack. It's higher on this side, lower on the other side. In fact, I almost touched it a little bit on the other side with the original lower piece welding, but that's okay. We can always melt it, reinforce it, add more. So first things first, we're gonna melt our little crease. Just not too much, just enough to give us that gap we need. And here we go. Now I'm wearing eye protection while doing this because the smoke is really bad for you. You don't want to get it in your eyes. You also don't want to breathe it, so I kind of keep my head to the side whenever I can. So you can see how I'm just kind of pushing it in and working it. Nice thing about this, if you don't do it right, you can always remelt it and reform it until you like it. In this case, since the two cracks are so close to each other, I'm going to end up turning two welds into one weld eventually. I'm going to start with the crack and then just kind of fill in the blanks. You want it to be nice and reinforced. You want it to last. Of course, if it ever breaks again, just repeat the process again. It's cheaper than buying a new part.